Welcome everyone to the Bellefonte Borough Council work session. No council action, making motions or approvals is taken during the work session. We have two items for discussion, and our first one is CATA and the Transportation Task Force. You're good. Okay, thank you.
So what I'll quickly do is introduce. Basically, we've asked CATA to come here this evening and give us some of the options that they're thinking about for our services starting July 1st. These are not set in stone. There still will be continuing negotiations, but these are their first effort at what they think they might be able to offer us.
Good evening. Is the mic on, working? Hi, I'm Dave Rischel from CATA. Thanks very much for inviting us back. We've been working with the folks and the local task force on some options and really trying to figure out a way to keep you all in the CATA family. Derek and Lori are also with me here tonight. Derek runs the service and Lori does our community outreach. I think most of you have met them before. When we've been talking with the task force, we've been discussing kind of service levels and pricing options, and they asked us to work out a couple of estimates of what it would cost to kind of keep things going at this level that we're doing now with the B-line. Excuse me, what if we increased it, and what would it cost if we came and operated some kind of a local fixed route service, like a circulator that went through town. So we worked those things up, and we're happy to chat with you a little bit about it. I'll tell you before we get into the numbers that we put the numbers together fairly quickly, some of the cost numbers. They are preliminary, and I think you'll find they don't add up. So they're in there just to give you a sense of proportion. We also will need to update some of the percentages to reflect this year's costs, which are still kind of in the middle of the year. We're still working on those. So first, I'll talk about the service that we're providing now to Bellefonte and Benner Township. As you know, we call this the B-line service. Now, this is a service that CATA actually created entirely for you folks out here whenever we had the funding impasse last year. And just as a refresher of what the service is and how it works, so it's a fully accessible point-to-point service. It's done with small vehicles. We have 20 designated points within Bellefonte and Benner Township that passengers would go to be picked up, and we also will drop off at those points. I'll talk a little bit about that more, why we use that model. And it also offers free connection to CATA services or other bus services at the Nittany Mall. So if you want to travel out of this area and go over into the center region, you can do that for free. This is an example of the pickup points that we established. This is a fairly innovative concept that we have borrowed from a couple other systems around the country. What we were trying to do is to get the most we could for every dollar we spent here. And we looked at the ridership statistics and data that we have when we were operating the CATA Go service, and we looked at where are a lot of the trips starting and ending. And we also looked at, what are some of the major destinations in the borough and in Benner Township. And rather than having our vehicles go all the way to your front door, what we ask passengers to do is to pick one of these points closest to them and reserve your trip from that point and then walk to that point to be picked up, much like a person would walk to a bus to get picked up along a bus route. So we're asking the passengers to do a little bit more. What this enables us to do is to spend less time with our vehicles driving around streets and going from one house to another house. It increases our efficiency. We can do more trips in an hour. So these are the points in Bellefonte, and these are the points along the Benner Pike in Benner Township. So passengers schedule rides for this service by calling advanced reservation. They can call from 8 in the morning to 5 p.m. the day before. We can do some service on the same day, but it's not guaranteed. And if you're traveling on Monday, passengers will call on Fridays. We don't have the reservation center open on the weekends. We don't allow what we call subscription trips because we expected this to be a service that was going to be in pretty high demand, especially during certain times of day. and we want it to be as fair as possible so that anybody who wants to use it would have an equal chance of getting a ride. So anybody who wants a ride calls for a reservation, and patrons can book for themselves plus one other passenger. And we found that many people have been doing that. People who are like commuting over to State College, they'll kind of book and travel together, which has helped us to have more efficient service. So we started the service, as you remember from last year, the borough had passed a budget amount, and we looked at what the service was going to cost and figured basically how many hours of service would this pay for in the coming year. And we initially looked at, we could afford to run a bus and a half, and buses, I'm talking little buses, the small vans, for essentially 5 hours a day from 7 to 9:30 in the morning, then nothing midday, and then from 3 to 5:30 in the afternoon. We were expecting, based on prior ridership with Catago, that we were going to have far more demand for this service than we could handle. And so this was our chance to be sure that we could handle the commuters and a few other local rides. Demand was much lower than expected. I think this was a surprise to both us and to the county. We know that the county was also prepared to handle some of the people who were riding Catago, who were going to lose the service, and they had planned to be able to add a couple of vehicles and some more drivers, and I don't believe that they had to do that. And we had lower demand than we expected. There has been consistent demand for the service, but it wasn't where we thought it was going to be. And because of that, we realized by November that we were not putting as much service on the street as we had expected, and therefore it wasn't costing us as much as we thought. So based on customer feedback and working with the task force, we knew that there was a lot of demand for that midday service so that people could make local trips around Bellefonte midday, because from 9:30...
Barbara Dan? Yes. Is Barbara stuck? I cannot see any of the slideshow. Or the PowerPoint presentation. Is somebody changing the slides? All I have is a CATA, the person, part of the PowerPoint. I don't know what
It says
slides.
your screen sharing.
We're checking on it, Doug, thank you.
Let me stop it and start it again.
Brenda, are you having the same problem?
Let's see here.
I would say screen 2 would be the one you want to share.
Okay, I assume as you go down.
Can you see it now?
So I mean, if you
Okay,
click these, maybe that'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
great.
good.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Sorry about that. Is it okay if I just continue from where we are right now? Instead of going back? Okay. So as I was saying, because there was no service between 9:30 in the morning and 3 p.m., we looked at basically our budget and our numbers and figured if we make it just one vehicle, we can run the vehicle from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. all day and meet the demand and then have some midday service. So since November, we've been doing that. So we really vastly expanded the service day. Between the start of the service in July and now, we've done just under 2,000 rides for people, and currently the cost is just under $22 a trip. So it's a fairly cost-effective transit service. And the fare for this service, again, is $4 for passengers. Okay? So the current level of service, as I mentioned before, it's really operating one bus from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's about 60 hours per week and just about 3,100 hours, 3,120 hours per year. So our cost to operate this service, and this is just the cost that we pay our contractor to run this service. If we look at 3,120 hours at $55.90 an hour, that costs annually $174,000 to operate the service that we have now. And this is where the numbers will change this year once we finish our planning and budgeting process, but I used last year's percentages to give you a sense of proportion. So last year, CATA's overall subsidy from state and federal sources covers about 62% of our operating costs. So we applied the same subsidy to the $174,000. So CATA is covering $108,000 of the current costs now with state and federal subsidies. Fares were projected to bring in about $22,000 and almost $23,000, and that left just over $52,000 that would need to be covered locally by the borough and by Benner Township. So that's essentially the service that we're operating now. If we were to look, we talked with the committee about what if we expanded the service, what if we brought in a little bit more service than we're doing right now. We've heard from passengers that ending the service at 6 p.m. is a problem for commuters because they can't get home in time to get the ride home. They have to leave work early. So we were considering if you wanted to expand it a little bit, expand it until 8 p.m. instead of just having it end at 6. That would bring the number of hours up to just over 3,600 hours, brings the total cost of the service to $203,000, and the local requirement there would be $61,000. I want to make one comment here that we already have seen just looking at our preliminary numbers. Our estimate last year was that fares would cover about 13% of the service. Because of the $4 fare, it's actually higher than that. Fares are covering closer to 18% of the service. So that would mean that the local requirement would drop from 30% to 25%. So that would be less that the borough would have to pay. So once we take a deeper look at these numbers, we'll rework them, but I could tell you the numbers will be lower than what these are. So that would be the cost if we expanded the service just a little bit. Yes?
Question. Is that just for Bellefonte Borough, or does that also include Benner?
That includes Bellefonte Borough and Benner.
Okay.
And if we were to lose Benner, then we might want to cut this back a little bit. You know, we could talk about how you would want to cover that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The capacity with, just to give you an idea of kind of what we could provide at that level. So there's a couple different ways we can do this. The current B-line service requires passengers to call the day before so that they can make their trip reservation. That lets us schedule the service a little bit more efficiently so we can get more vehicles or more trips scheduled per hour since we have the trips ahead of time and we can kind of pack them in and adjust them a little bit. That's not how CATA Go worked. CATA Go worked more like an Uber service where you request the ride and the vehicle comes right away. That's more convenient for passengers, but it's less efficient because the vehicles tend to kind of ping pong around a little bit more. So it's kind of, you're making a choice. Do you want to be more efficient or do you want to make fewer customers happier? Our recommendation would be to stick with kind of a next day. It provides more rides, but we could also experiment and do the same day reservation. No matter how we go, we would recommend that we stay with the pickup points instead of going door to door. That really does seem to have made us more efficient so that we can provide more rides for the same number of dollars. There was also a discussion with the group about what if we ran a bus, a circulator through Bellefonte that kind of would circulate around Bellefonte. There's a bunch of different ways you could route something like this. Just considering the borough, I would think it would probably loop every 15 minutes or so around the borough, 15 or 20 minutes depending on how it was routed. However we do something like that, the cost structure of what we call fixed route service, kind of traditional bus service, is different. Excuse me. Our current business concept or our organizational structure is that our small vehicle services are managed by a contractor, and they have that rate of just under $60 an hour. If it is fixed route work, like traditional bus route, that is work that falls to our union. So we would have to be doing that with CATA's employed drivers under union contract rules. and that's a little bit more expensive. That brings the cost up to $158 an hour. So it's a much more expensive service to operate. So there's a lot of numbers here. I won't go through them all, but essentially, if we were to operate some kind of a loop that looped around the borough, running like from 8 in the morning until 5 p.m., it would probably be about 55 hours a week. These are really round numbers. We assumed it would operate 50 weeks a year, probably not during some holiday periods. We could do it with one bus, a smaller bus, and we could transport about 14 people at a time on a bus of that size. It is possible to use a larger full-size transit bus, but here in the borough with the streets, we really wouldn't recommend that. We used to do that here, and it always caused us problems. If we were to operate this, as I said, it's much more expensive. At $158 an hour, it would be basically $500,000 to operate a service like this. One of the other considerations is anytime we operate what we call fixed route bus service, traditional bus service, there's a federal law called the Americans with Disabilities Act that requires us to also operate CATA ride service. This would be paratransit for passengers who have disabilities who can't ride that bus. So we're required to provide that any place we provide a bus service, and that would probably add at least $75,000 to the cost of this, because that has to come in and be run separately. So it would be fairly expensive for us to operate any kind of a local circulator, and I think until we were certain that you had a much higher expected demand, it would require at least $130,000 from the borough to subsidize something like this. And so we really wouldn't recommend it. We don't think that the ridership justifies that cost at this point. At some point in the future, perhaps, once we rebuild ridership, that might make sense, but at this point we would not recommend it. We would also recommend that the fare for these services, however we do it, would remain at $4, because that really has been a help reducing costs. And again, we suggested initially the $4 fare for this service because it is an entirely different service. And also, you probably remember the public hearings that we had last January. A lot of the folks who commented said that they wanted us to charge a higher fare so that we could subsidize the service more. So I think that's also been financially advantageous to keep doing that. So those are the options that the committee asked us to take a look at. Our recommendation would be to kind of stay the course with the service level that you have now, or some close variation of that. Perhaps experimenting with offering on-demand service, same-day service, keeping the fare the same. This is really your best level of service for the cost. It's kind of your best return on investment. And we had talked also with the committee about some destinations that are outside of the borough. There are two in Spring Township. There's the new Geisinger Center, and there's also the Weiss Market. And if Benner were to leave, then the Giant would be outside of the service area. And we're prohibited by law from operating in those areas unless we have essentially permission by contract to operate there. So there may be a way that we can help you talk to those private entities, and they might be able to talk to the townships and give us permission to operate there. And in some cases, and I think there's a historical precedent for that here, those private entities might even be willing to contribute some money toward the service. I think there was a housing complex here that in the past did contribute money to support the services here. So that's an option. We'd be happy to work with you to try to make that happen if you were interested in doing that. There was another question that came up that I wanted to touch on. The committee asked, what if Bellefonte were to become a CATA member? As you know, CATA is a public authority. We are chartered by the 5 municipalities in the center region, Borough of State College, Patton, Ferguson, Harris, and College Townships. So they're my boss in all of this. And any service we provide outside of that area has to be under contract to a municipality, which is why we are here talking with you folks. But it's conceivable that if you said you wanted to join CATA and you wanted to underwrite the authority and become a permanent member of the authority, That's possible. No one has ever done that before. But I've talked with our board, and what they've requested is that a first step would be really to define, if you were to join CATA, what would you want done? What kind of transportation service would you be looking for here? And the best way to determine that is for you to independently conduct some kind of a consulting study or an analysis. We could provide you with the CATA Go data that we had from past services and give you, elected officials, a chance to think about what kind of public transit service would we want in Bellefonte. So what would we want to ask CATA to do here? And then share that with our board of directors and also with the member municipalities, because they would have to vote to allow you to join the authority. So it is a process that hasn't happened before, so we'd be kind of all figuring it out as we go. But that would be a good first step. If you really wanted to pursue this and consider a deeper commitment to CATA, I think that would be a good first step. And that's it. Happy to talk about any of this or answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for coming this evening. This has been a big help.
Sure, always a pleasure.
I do have a question from the statistics that ridership statistics that you have. What percentage of the rides on the B line were just within the borough of Bellefonte versus the ones who traveled to?
We'll have to get back to you on that. I don't
outside
have that at my
destinations.
fingertips. But Derek, are you taking notes, or Lori? Yeah. We'll get that back to you before your next meeting.
Because that gives us an idea of what
Sure.
type
I
of
can tell you
demand
that
there is.
the numbers prior to November were very low. Most of the people who were traveling were using us as a commuter service to get up to the Nittany Mall to catch the bus.
Okay, that was my other question,
Yes.
were those longer trips primarily to connect with the rest of the CATA service?
Yes, most of them were. And now that we're providing service all day, that's changing a little bit. We're trying to get the word out to people that the B line is available for travel all day, and we are seeing some growth of people kind of staying local.
Okay, so people are beginning to shift a little bit, maybe in their
A
travel
little bit.
behavior and
We'll
where they're
get you
going.
some specific numbers for that.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
As far as the membership, how would that change our financial obligation? Or would it change?
Well, it would, so one of the first things is that the borough would have to legally agree to underwrite the authority in terms of risk.
Okay.
Like if, God forbid, if there was some terrible catastrophe, the 5 members are financially responsible for CATA. So Bellefonte would have to legally take on a share of that responsibility. In terms of the kind of financial commitment for other services, that's really why the board is asking to do a study so that we could understand what are the services that you'd like to have, and then figure out what would that cost and how can we work that out on a longer term basis.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'll follow that up with what Barb just asked. Would that also not theoretically reduce our local share? Because currently the local share is based on population within the center region, whereas here it's multiple different things. And that, so it may increase what the local share per capita might be, but it would definitely be less than what we're doing. Understanding the insurance and liability issue.
Yeah, I can't say it definitely would or wouldn't be anything. We really haven't looked at it. It could be. Yeah.
I have three broad questions related to Benner and Spring Townships and our interaction with them.
Mm-hmm.
You did mention about you called it the explore private destinations.
Yes.
Okay. I'm assuming from that that if we could get, that That is one of the things that the Public Transit Task Force has been looking at, because that's one of the biggest complaints we've heard is with Bellefonte being a food and healthcare desert. And how would, if we were to do that, how would that fit in with these two options?
So they would fit with any option.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, we're being super creative here
Okay.
to do something like this. What it would require is, so correct me if I'm wrong, Geisinger and Weiss are in Spring Township,
As is Mount Nittany Health.
Mount Any Health.
So there's actually 3 in Spring.
If you wanted those areas served, Spring Township would have to pass a resolution giving us legal permission to operate there. And there would also be a financial match commitment that would go with that. We haven't worked that out yet about how much that would be. It wouldn't be gigantic. And my suggestion would be if you can get those private venues to provide some or all of that funding, then that could be a way that Spring could do it, but it wouldn't necessarily cost them anything. A couple of ifs there, but that's kind of how we'd recommend approaching it. And if they would give us legal permission to operate there, then we could serve just those destinations. Like we couldn't stop anywhere else, but we could go to those points in those townships. The same would be true for Benner. If Benner Township were to leave the system, but people still wanted to go to the Giant, if we could get Benner to pass a resolution and give us permission just to go to the Giant, we'd be allowed to do that. We're just legally not permitted to pick up and drop off passengers anywhere where we either, if they're not in our authority area, then we have to have permission from the municipality to do that, otherwise we're breaking state law.
So I think that partially answers my third question. The task force had contacted PennDOT about a matter of contracts with municipalities, and what they told us is that they could consider that decision is decided locally.
I'm sorry?
They said that the matter of contracts with municipalities is something to be decided locally. That's a quote.
Yes.
Okay. So what you were saying, and I just want to make this clear, is that you would work with us to help get those corporate entities to agree to find some funding, and then help us work with Spring and/or Benner if we need to help work through the process of getting that contract.
Yeah, to be clear, we'll work with you to figure out how to do it, and we can help you advocate for it, but we can't,
Okay.
go beyond that.
Okay.
Folks still have to be willing to do it and agree to do it, but we will certainly try to figure out how to make something like that happen.
Okay. And the third question is that map did look like it's sort of like the current Catago service areas with specific stops.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We know that it's important to Benner that we serve the Buffalo Run Valley, and for Bellefonte, Geisinger, Mount Nittany Health, Weiss, and Spring Township. And you've just said that that is a possibility to this. Kathy Evie, who is the Benner Township Supervisor, who's part of the task force, could not be here this evening, so she asked me to ask the following question. She said, if a resident survey would show a significant number of interested people, would CATA consider a loop in Benner Township's highly populated areas along Fillmore Road and Route 550?
We are always willing to consider anything, anywhere, if the municipality lets us, and then if they're willing to pay their proportional share of the cost of that service. So, yes.
Okay. Those were my 3 questions. Thank you.
As long as we have permission, we can go essentially anywhere in the state, as long as we could figure out how to pay for it and we have permission to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Yeah, I do. So I don't know how often we're working with Benner. I guess that the townships and the borough are working together whenever you have these meetings. But let's say they want to go ahead and do like you're talking about to the hospitals and everything, and then they decide, well, we don't like to do this. We're leaving. Now what are you going to do?
Well, we would only be able to serve in the borough. Or we can serve in the borough and we can we still connect to the Nittany Mall. So we can go to College Township.
Just a comment. I think that's where that statistical information would be helpful to know, the number of rides proportionally that are going to the mall to connect with the rest of your fixtured service.
Yes.
Because I think that's a
Yeah.
primary concern.
Anecdotally, what we've heard is that people are going up there both to transfer to the bus to go to into the center region further, and people also go up to grocery shop at Aldi and to Walmart.
And without Giant, that's going to be the closest option. Okay, thank you.
And that would still exist. Should none of these other ideas work, that would still be available.
No more questions? Anybody? Any more questions? Thank you, sir, very much.
Yes,
We
thank you very much.
appreciate
Thanks for the
everything.
invitation. Look forward to keep talking with you. Can I add one other thing?
Oh, yeah.
Just as a point of clarification, to remind you what you already know, the borough has given CATA notice that you're leaving your contract at the end of June 30th. So if nothing else happens, that's what will happen. We hope that you decide to stay with us. If you do, we would need a resolution from the board, or from the council, saying that you did want to renew the contract for the coming year. And we would need that within the next couple of months because we're finalizing our budget and we also have to finalize our contract with our provider to let them know if they're going to be operating here or if they're not going to be operating here. So I can't give you a specific date, but sooner than later, please. Thank you.
Could I make one quick comment before we move to the next item? Because I do notice that there are a couple of people who are on Zoom that might be interested in commenting from the public. That's not going to occur until the main meeting, so if you still want to hang on, please do so.
We'll be ready in just a minute to talk about Parkview Boulevard and the Airport Road traffic signal update and discussion.
Try this again here. You folks watching on Zoom, can you see the slides? Okay. Why don't you come on up here, Nick? This is Nick Schaefer. I'm sorry, get close to the microphone. I'll help you get started here. Nick Schaefer is our engineer working with us on behalf of the borough in relation to the Parkview Heights Zion Road traffic light. And then as a school project, the elementary school and Airport Road has progressed. We've had Nick help us review the HOP, they call it the highway occupancy permit plans for the elementary school being submitted to PennDOT by the school district. So what we wanted to do is have Nick kind of walk through the project, where we are at. There's a few questions that have come up informally, and I would like to go over them. Let me just try to adjust this PowerPoint. It doesn't quite seem to be to scale here. For example, this picture seems much smaller than it should be. Let me see here. No, it's not working. This picture is hard to see, but up at top, as you can see where my arrow key is, that's Airport Road, and then right down here is Parkview Boulevard. And we wanted to go over the plans real quick just to tell you what is there and then answer a few questions that have come up. So this is the plan for Airport Road. Let me point out a few things, and we'll see if there's any questions, and maybe Nick can jump in if there's something he needs to answer. But see where the arrow is? There's a crosswalk across Airport Road. There's only one crosswalk at this intersection. This intersection will be signaled. It'll have a traffic light at this intersection put in by the school district per PennDOT requirements, their standards. Everything will be ironed out in a permit for them to follow for this intersection. Any questions so far? Oh, yes, Deb?
I'm familiar with the intersection at Airport Road, and the existing crosswalk that is there now is a long one, and it's a very hazardous place to walk. I understand there will be a signal there at some point. These plans seem to indicate that you're going to be changing part of that intersection and actually making the crosswalk longer, which seems counterintuitive.
Do you want to answer that, Nick? It does appear to be longer. I think there's a push button pedestrian crossing timings. Do you want to speak to that?
Okay, just for the record, Transit Associates is not designing this intersection, that's HRG, but I'll
Okay.
try to answer any questions that you have. The crossing will have countdown pedestrian timers, like the signal heads that you see when you cross. So that will give the pedestrian that's crossing an idea of how long they have to cross. And that will provide a little bit better of safety than what's there now. And obviously, when the pedestrian gets that crossing signal, the traffic on 550 will be moving, and the Airport Road will have the red light. So there will be no conflict for those pedestrians. There will be rights still allowed during the movement when the pedestrians are going, and a left turn movement. And as is now, and will be with the signal, there will be just yield movements for the traffic to pay attention to make sure that they're not interfering with those pedestrians crossing.
It's a wonderful theory, but I think it's not a particularly safe intersection as it is now, and you're putting it next to a school zone.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We can back up, and I'll show you the other intersection.
I'll add one more question.
I'm sorry, Randy, I missed you.
Are there any signs to, like, if you could make the, if you want to stop somebody trying to make a right turn, can't you put no turn on red, or it does it on the light system itself? No right turns?
Yeah, you can install on the mast arm or post mounted no turn on red signs for that right turn movement, for sure. And also, yeah, they do have like the fiber optic blank out signs where it would illuminate, no turn on red to make the drivers more aware that there's no turn on red there. And that could be a possibility. Let me zoom in here and see if I can pan around. That could be. Yeah, it would be listed in this sign tabulation here if there was a no turn on red sign. But that is something that we can comment on with HRG and discuss that with PennDOT to add that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have a comment. I agree with Deb. I live close to there, and it is a heavily used area. It is right now very dangerous to walk across there as cars can go left or right, and it's at an angle, so they just kind of take that and go. I guess my thought was, we've discussed around this table before how to make our crosswalks safer, and one of the things that we looked at are the yellow illuminated lights that are very visible. The whole sign lights up when you press that button to walk. I know there's a few in State College. Do we have any authority to require them to install something like that to ensure more safety? Students walk there currently, cross-country team, track team. It is, with the walking trail there, it is very heavily used, and it is also very dangerous. So the more safety measures we could put, I would feel the better it would be.
Sure. Yeah, and I believe you're referring to like the rectangular rapid flashing beacons that you see. Now, we did discuss that with PennDOT for this intersection as well as Parkview, and they wouldn't permit those to be installed at a signal. Those are only permitted to be installed at an unsignalized intersection or a mid-block crossing. The reason being is because these have, you know, the specific traffic signals involved to protect pedestrians in that way. Yeah, I mean, but there are other, like, they have installed like the piano type crosswalk here, which will help make drivers more aware of a pedestrian crossing. You know, we could install that no turn on red sign, that will help. We can explore other additional signage like the fluorescent yellow signage, pedestrian crossings ahead, things like that, which could be added as well. Yes.
Another thought, what we've been doing with traffic calming in the downtown area is putting stamped crosswalks. I know you can't put a raised one here, but is it possible to make this crosswalk a stamped one that makes it more highlighted than what a normal painted one would do? We have found that tells drivers, watch out, you may see somebody here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's possible. That would have to be discussed with HRG and the school, as it would add additional cost.
I think it should be good for both of them, FYI.
Are you good? We'll go down to the other intersection real quick, and then we'll go over a couple of things. So this is Parkview and Zion Road. You know, Parkview is going up towards the north here. There are two crosswalks, one across Parkview Boulevard, right here where the arrow is, and then one across Zion Road. And that's our understanding, the way council wants this. And again, this will be signalized. There will be a four-way, traffic light at this intersection. You recall a couple years ago, a study was done and it turned out it was warranted. So this is in the permitting process. Now, we again, as Nick said, the question about the rapid flashing beacons was asked about this intersection also. We have word from PennDOT, the signal people at PennDOT, that it's not accepted at signalized intersections. So lastly, I'm going to go back up to the picture. Let me stop and see if there's any questions that you might have before we leave this drawing.
So, just to reiterate what I just said, I think both of these crosswalks could be stamped.
Okay. One other thing I did want to mention with the crosswalks too, we are implementing for the Zion Road crossing, we're implementing a leading pedestrian interval, which means that they get the walk signal before, in this case, Parkview Boulevard would get the green. So that puts them already in the crosswalk, so they can get moving ahead of the right or left turns ahead. And one other thing that we were possibly going to install were the audible pedestrian signals. It kind of it's a beeping or a chirping noise that when you hit the button it chirps, or it's for your hearing impaired. Or sorry, your sight impaired. Yeah, it is going to be required by a new publication that's coming out. PennDOT has not adopted that yet, but I believe that they are going to require it at new signals in municipalities shortly. So We have asked PennDOT if they're going to require it here. I haven't heard back from them at this point yet, but we will install if they want them, and if the borough wants them.
Could the leading pedestrian interval also be timed for the airport road?
It is not currently, I don't believe, but yeah, we could
I mean, that to
make
me
that
would be
recommendation. Yeah.
pretty much a no-brainer, because that intersection is so wide. That would definitely, if the pedestrian button is activated, it would give a pedestrian those extra few seconds to get across the roadway.
Sure.
Thank you.
I would think, just one more comment. I'm not sure, I know we have a very high population of students who walk to school. And with this new school, I know it's elementary school, but I'm assuming that some of the upper grade levels will walk. So they're going to have to go across and then somehow get to that new school.
Ralph can talk.
I'll press pause, how's that?
Yeah. Thank you. I know I wasn't near the microphone. I'm asking our mayor to hold off. We're going to discuss that because some of these ideas came out in emails going back and forth with Nick. So I'm hearing, before we leave this slide, if possible, go with the stamped crosswalks here also. Okay, we'll try and do that. So I'm going to go back up to the picture. We're always looking for funding. It's important to us. Outside funding, whatever we can find helps lower our expenses, our local expenses. So these two intersections, are fairly close. And on the south side, we were discussing grant funds and that type of thing. And Nick mentioned, and it's certainly an issue, there is no sidewalk along the south side of Zion Road between these two intersections. Once you get to the west of Airport Road, you have a sidewalk that goes down to the bike path. You have a sidewalk that goes to the high school, so we're in pretty good shape there. But again, nothing from the corner of Airport down to where you would cross to go to Parkview Boulevard. It's not too late. What Nick said in his email, which I have in your information, is that if we were to include a sidewalk as part of the project, our chances of getting grant funding would probably increase. We're not guaranteed anything, but they would probably increase. Now, if we're going this way, we're going no matter what, whether we get $1 or we get 100%. If we're going to put it on paper, we're going to go that route. So there's a couple of things. We want to see if you're interested. You want it in the project. We got to obviously maybe talk to the school district, talk to PennDOT, all those funding agents, see who does what, how we split that up if it's possible, but put it in the project if you're interested, and then, move forward, tell everybody that's what we want to do. So, wanted to get your input, maybe see if there's questions. Go ahead, Joanne.
Having worked with the traffic calming thing, DCED has a grant program called Safe Walks to Schools that it would be fit perfectly with this program if we were to put the sidewalk in. Because what that program does is it's asking that within a half mile of every school district, there are safe sidewalks for kids, particularly elementary school kids, to get from their houses to the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's also, I think, when I was talking to Ralph about this, it was the multimodal grant, and I had thought just adding that sidewalk portion into that grant would lend itself more towards a multimodal use than just a traffic signal. So that's why I was thinking if the borough added that into the grant, it would be more likely to be looked at positively. But the safe streets, or the safe routes to school, that grant too, I don't believe a traffic signal can be in with those. The sidewalk, though, would be a definite.
No, but I believe you can piggyback multiple grants to help us out.
Sure, yeah. And I know with grant funding, the Arlie grant, that is coming up in June. I think that you can apply for those grants in June. The Green Light Go is actually, those grants need to be in this month. So I'm not sure. We might be able to get an exception if the borough wanted to pursue that route. I'm not sure how, I don't know if new signals for Green Light Go are looked upon positively either. It's more modernization, things like that for traffic signals.
I have a question about the sidewalks. When the sidewalk crosses Zion Road, and then we also have one crossing Parkview Boulevard, would there be a sidewalk going down the side of Parkview Boulevard, or a crosswalk, I mean? Would there be a sidewalk going down Parkview Boulevard then, on what we're looking at, the left side?
On going across Zion Road there?
Yes.
As of now, no, there's no crosswalk proposed for that side, on the western side of the intersection.
And I just add, Barb, I don't know if you're talking about a sidewalk along
I'm
Northwest
sorry,
Savings?
I meant crosswalk crossing Zion Road.
Okay, yeah, the only crosswalk is right there at Parkview Boulevard. If you go up to Airport Road, there's no sidewalk, there's a bank in front of the Armory. So, it doesn't go anywhere today,
Right. And then when someone would cross Zion Road to Parkview Boulevard, there is also a crosswalk across Parkview Boulevard then too, is that correct?
There is on this drawing. I
Okay.
think currently today there is none. That's my recollection.
Right, there is, I don't think there
But,
is.
yeah, on this drawing, there would be one across Parkview and across Zion, and they don't attach on that side to any sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
I know, looking at this, right now, the majority of pedestrians, myself and my family included, we walk, I believe it says it's Triangle Road, and then we will cross right there, because I don't know, unless you've ever walked across that on Zion Road, Bishop Street, saying that it's dangerous is an understatement. So, the majority of people, like I said, will go that route and then cross right there. I don't know what would there be a way to make that a private walkway or something?
It's one of these unordained lanes, properties that were never officially taken over by the borough. I think it has potential to put in a path or something anyway. Whether it's something more informal, more like a bike path or something that could be looked at. But yes, that could be done, but you'd still have to probably tie something over to come out, Center Street, and then over to the intersection of the crosswalk.
Right, and I'm sure that when the school district looks at this, they're going to be aware too that this is very dangerous. But I would like for the borough to do everything possible to express, making this the safest possible. And I know that's in our best interest, but what can we do to make this intersection safe? Because like I said, to say it's dangerous is an understatement.
So Buddy, I've got a question for you. Are you asking for a crosswalk when you look at the map, Triangle Road comes off of Airport Road, goes down, but to what's never 1090, which is that white building.
No, I'm not asking for a crosswalk there. I'm simply stating that right now, the majority of people who walk Zion Road will go down there because it's so much safer. You can see there's plenty of area and cars aren't just turning and going fast. That's the only thing I'm saying. That could be an option to possibly look at because it is a lot safer. It's, 100 and 150 yards down. That's where the majority of people who live on Center Street and that way who walk Zion Road, or even if you're walking from the high school that way, a lot of people will follow the sidewalk down, cross there, and then cut through where Don's Auto used to be, right there, and just cut back up because it's very dangerous.
So if the
Thank you, buddy.
sidewalk were to go all the way down to Center Street, and people did take that shortcut down Triangle, I think maybe the crosswalk that Parkview would be adequate. But you might want to look at the possibility of a second sidewalk there at that intersection, just this, and I don't know, since it's so close, whether PennDOT would allow that or not.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're out of time.
All right, well, we wanted to bring you up to speed, and you can let me know your thoughts. Thank you very much, Nick, for being here. Appreciate it. Yep. Thank you. I'll shut this down here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks.
To the Bellefonte Borough Council Business Meeting. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Could I have roll call, please?
Mr. Bernier. Mr. Brackbill.
Here?
Ms. Clayton, yes. Ms. Dan.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. McKean.
Here.
Ms. Purnell.
Here.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Here.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
I'm here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
And Mr. Larson.
I'm here.
And Jaylene is excused. Thank you.
Okay, additions to the council meeting agenda. Under Act 65 of 2021, if a matter is not on the agenda, council may not take official action on it with the following exceptions. Council can act on matters relating to potential or real emergencies. Council may add a matter of agency business to its agenda through a majority vote. The council must state why the action item is being added to the agenda. Joanne,
I
please.
would like to make a motion to move items not on the agenda to the first rather than the last item on this evening's meeting in order for any member of the public to be able to comment, particularly about what happened in the work session earlier this
Okay, for
evening.
public comment. Is there a second for that?
I'll second Brackbill.
Thank you, Randy. Any discussion? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Bernier. Yes. Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Clayton, yes. Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Mayor Johnson. No, never mind.
Thank you. For public comment, Borough Council intends to take public comment related to the motion that is on the floor after it has been duly made and seconded. The order of comment will be public comment and then council comments, including proposed amendments by council members. If amendments are proposed to the original motion, the public will then only comment on the amendment before the final votes are taken. You must be a Bellefonte Borough resident, nonprofit representative, business owner, or official representative of another governmental agency. Speakers shall identify themselves by name and street, municipality, if outside the Borough of Bellefonte. Comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Madam President, I have a motion.
Yes.
I'd like to move the executive session that was on tonight's, after adjournment, and move the, so I just want to do that. I want to move that from table so that we can vote on it.
I think we did that before, correct? And you can do that, and it's just a motion and a second.
Yeah, I think what he's asking is that we're asking for it to be moved to the next meeting, but in order to do that, it has to be taken off the table so that
Okay.
we can table it again to the next meeting.
Okay.
'Cause
Thank you. So do we need to do anything else then? You just want to table it? Do we need a second?
We need a second,
Okay?
I'll second.
so that would take them to the table. And the purpose of this is to move this this executive session to March 3rd, 2025.
Great, thank you. This is no vote, though, correct? Or it is a vote?
It is a vote.
It is a vote. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Bernier. Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Clayton, yes. Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have public comments that are not on the agenda, mostly related to CATA?
They left. Guess not. I don't see Joan anymore.
I don't either. Great, okay, thank you. We will move on. Under communications, we have the Center County Transportation update. For February 2025, there is no council action requested. I would like to ask the administration if we could possibly post that on the website. It had some good information on it.
Sure.
Great, thank you. Next is the Mill Race Bridge replacement on-site meeting minutes. The project is scheduled for 2026. There is no council action requested for this. Was there any discussion? Okay, moving on, we had an email to consider a pesticide herbicide spray ban for absentee landlords in the Bellefonte Borough. This topic may be considered for a future agenda and an action item.
I'm recommending that we move that to the new ordinance review committee.
Joanne, I also looked, and this could also come under the environmental committee, whichever council thinks would be a better reference.
I'm the chair of the environmental, and I don't particularly care which one it goes to.
Okay.
So just, what's the sentiment of council?
Environmental is Joanne, Rita, Randy, and Kent. Or we can do the ordinance. Anybody have a preference where that goes?
I'm fine with the Environment Committee taking a look at the
Thank you.
subject in general and then specifically this correspondence.
Okay, great. Joanne? Okay, so we will pass that on to the environmental committee. Is there anybody else, while we're talking about committees, is there anybody else that would be interested in the ordinance committee? And if you are, could talk to Joanne or Randy after the meeting. We had an email, thank you, from Mr. Mark Stitzer for the work session discussing the lighting issue, and we appreciate that. The letter from the Bellefonte Area School District school directors changed compensation rates for elected real estate tax collectors whose terms begin in 2026. There is no council action requested. Any comments?
Yeah, I have a question. How does the school board directors affect our borough's budget? Are we using the same tax collector? And if so, how will we be matching their fees?
They're paying the real estate tax collector separately. It does not affect our budget at all. I did inquire to our real estate collector if there was anything of interest, and unfortunately, there's a state deadline that has come and gone for the borough to pass a resolution or change compensation. So it could be considered later this year or early next year. But so to answer your question, there's no impact on our budget. It's the school district's budget that's impacted. And if the borough wants to consider something, it would not go into effect probably till 27, if you're interested. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Moving on, we had a letter from Spring Township with concerns about the Big Spring well drilling project, and we had a response from the authority on that. We had a letter also from the stage information. It was received on February 14th. There was an email exchange, which you may have seen in your packet. We may take action on this. My questions would be, do we want to add this as a discussion item at the next meeting? Or since we do not have a definitive timeline, should we wait until we have a better timeline? I believe that's what they're asking for.
I would just, comment that the authority is extremely early in their investigatory process. They're meeting with another consultant, or they're calling us a consultant they've been working with about a proposal. They'll meet on their March meeting. They only meet once a month. And the proposal is very lengthy, very detailed, very technical, and very expensive. So they got to work their way through that and figure out if that's the next step or not. They probably realistically won't know for several months at minimum, and that's just a guess, when they could say yes or no or anything. They're just so early in the process. But, you know, we're trying to keep the authority in the loop and keep council in the loop every step of the way.
Joy.
Related question to the letter from Spring Township. I just like them, I kind of like the idea of the solid structure. But, and I do agree that the letter, that the cost that you mentioned in your letter, so that kind of mitigation is very high. And I was wondering, could we ask Spring Township if they will, if that's really what the community wants, would they be willing to help pay for part of the additional cost to alleviate their concerns, and the concern that I mentioned last time that I was told I had asked too early about about the safety of having wells in the park? I mean, I don't think it's ever a problem to ask.
I can pass that on to the authority. I think they were, you know, they wanted to be respectful of sending a letter back to the Spring Township without looking, you know, trying to be not respectful. But at some point, if that is something that is, we're going down that path, we're millions of dollars short of the cost. So we'll have to do something.
Sure.
A quick question on this one. So when will we hear from the engineers working on this project? Because last I heard it was going to be in December, and we're now 2 months out of that.
Randy, one study was done in December. We've gone over that a little bit in notes on the agenda. The only thing they determined, we had a diagram at the last, I think it was the meeting in January, or one of the meetings in January. The diagram, it wasn't the complete study, it was a partial study, and it showed where the water was underground. So the next step is to find out where the bedrock is underground, where the best place to locate a well would be, and that's the next series of studies that are being considered by the authority. They're taking it like baby steps, and then and on top of that, they're discussing when to go down to talk to DEP with enough data, you know, in hand to answer questions. At any point in time, DEP could say, look, there's no project. At any point in time, they could find, the data could say, this is too expensive or too risky or something. So the authority cannot give an answer to anybody because they don't know when that deadline is. I can tell you, you know, they're, as we said in the letter back to Spring Township, they're very early in the investigative process. And that's how it is. They did not spend the entire amount of money that was approved or talked about out of their budget. It was only a partial amount. So they only have a partial study done so far.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to get that to the residents, because we're not really here.
So does council think at this point we just let this ride until we have more information? Would that be the appropriate thing to do with this? And I assume that's good for you?
Yes, oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm gonna meet with some representatives of the stage committee and kind of reiterate this and, you know, try to answer questions, but I cannot provide deadlines.
Great, thank you. Okay, one more communication. We had an email, community groups planning to meet to discuss common issues. The meeting will be held at 6:30 on Wednesday, March 5th in the Oak Room, first floor of this building, 301 North Spring Street. Elected officials are welcome to attend. There is no council action required on that. The letter was in your packet. Any comment on that? Okay, next we will move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of council request specific items to be removed for a separate action. I'll need a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Thank you, Shauna.
I'll second Brackville.
I don't think I need to pull this, I just think we need to have a typo corrected.
Okay.
It's on the budget versus actual summary. The second column is listed as 24, not 2024, not 2025. And it was the January report, so I think it should say 2025.
Oh, we'll take care of that.
Thank you, Joanne. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? If not, anything from council? Anything else on council? Roll call vote, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Bernier,
Yes.
Mr. Brackville,
Yes.
Ms. Clayton, yes. Ms. Dan,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
excuse me, Ms. McKean,
Yes.
Ms. Purnell,
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick,
Yes.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to reports. Mr. Mayor, please.
Thank you. I have a School Resource Officer Appreciation Day proclamation. Whereas the National Association of School Resource Officers and the Bellefonte Borough Police Department are dedicated to making schools and children safer by providing the highest quality training to school-based law enforcement officers. And whereas school resource officers within the Bellefonte Area School District bridge gaps between youth and law enforcement and embrace a triad concept of school policing, serving in informal counseling, education, and law enforcement roles in supporting students and communities they serve. And whereas by training law enforcement officers to counsel, educate, and protect school communities, the men and women in blue promote a positive image of law enforcement to school children and school communities. And whereas SRO programs across the globe are founded as collaborative efforts by police agencies, law enforcement officers, educators, students, parents, and communities to create safe learning environments, provide valuable resources to school staff members, foster positive relationships with students, and develop strategies to resolve problems that affect youth with the goal of protecting all children so they can reach their fullest potential. And whereas Bellefonte school resource officers are valuable and essential members of the education community and deserve unwavering respect and support from the public in pursuit of keeping schools and students safe. As a counselor and mentor, the SROs impact the lives of our future generations and ensure staff's safety throughout ALICE training. And now, therefore, the National Association of School Resource Officers and I, Mayor Buddy Johnson, do hereby proclaim February 15th, 2025 as School Resource Officer Appreciation Day. And I would just like to add, I would like to give a public thank you to Officer Sean Luce and Officer Mike Lyons, who do a phenomenal job within our schools. And we are very fortunate to have both of them be part of the Bellefonte Police Department as well as the Bellefonte Area School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Did you want to talk about the Community Advisory Committee?
Sure. On February 5th, the Bellefonte Superintendent and I held a Bellefonte Community Advisory Committee meeting. It was a great turnout, and it was a phenomenal time for people just to sit around, really with no agenda, but to express what each entity is doing within the community and how we can help each other and help our community thrive. Some of the attendees were somebody from the Bellefonte School Board, business owners, Youth Service Bureau, the Bellefonte Police Department, the Bellefonte Elks, a local historian, Spring Township Police, the Director of Safety and Security from the Bellefonte Schools, another community member, a Spring Township Council member, a youth pastor from the Faith Church, somebody from the Bellefonte Cruise, a representative from the Faith Center, a social worker, and Bellefonte School District principals showed up. I feel that in my time as mayor, it was one of the most valuable meetings and gatherings that I've been part of, and it's just great. We'll probably meet quarterly, and it's just a way that we can work together to get important information and collaborate with one another. If you have questions about more, or if you would like to attend one of these meetings, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Whitmer, do you want to add to your report? Thank you.
Good evening. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review my report for January. It wasn't too eventful. We did start our hiring process. Hopefully we'll get that wrapped up here beginning of March. Our officers right now have begun their annual training for their certifications. They should be wrapping that up at the end of February. Our numbers for the month are pretty average or from years past. So January's just been a cold month and pretty uneventful for the most part. The second reason I'm up here is I was asked to write an article for the Bellefonte Borough newsletter that will be coming out shortly, and also to present it tonight to you. So my topic is going to be the new changes to the cell phone laws and driving. So I'm going to get this plugged in here. Yeah, see if you can.
Yeah, just need a second here.
Bottom.
Bottom one thing, yeah. Okay, 1 second here. So, let me go. Oops, hang on a second. Okay, I think you're good to go.
And then use the arrows to move it. Okay.
Yeah, click down here.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. First of all, was anyone aware of the changes this year? Some, maybe. Well, hopefully you learned something from this or take something from it. So what it was, Governor Shapiro back on June 5th of 2024 signed signed into law Senate Bill 37. It's also known as the Paul Miller Law. And why is it called the Paul Miller Law? Paul Miller was tragically killed in a motor vehicle accident with a tractor trailer in 2010 in Monroe County as a result of a distracted driver. And what does the Paul Miller Law do? It allows law enforcement to issue tickets when a driver uses a cell phone while driving. Okay, we already had some laws in place. This is even better. Just wait. So the current law right now, it's under PA Title 75, the Vehicle Code 3316. The current law states no driver shall operate a motor vehicle on a highway or traffic way in this Commonwealth while using an interactive wireless communication device to send, read, or write a text-based communication while the vehicle is in motion. That says text. It doesn't say call, talk, things like that, right? New law, pretty cut and dry. 3316.1. No driver shall use an interactive mobile device while driving a motor vehicle. So we look at the definitions. I put definitions because it's very important that you pay attention to that for the new law. It says driving. Operating motor vehicle on a highway, including while the motor vehicle is in temporarily stationary because of traffic or traffic control devices or other momentary delays. So the big change there to take from that, right now, if you're stopped at a stop sign, traffic light, and a traffic jam, you can use your device. Now what it's saying is, not anymore. You have to pull off the road out of the flow of traffic. That's when you can pull out your cell phone and use it again. Okay? The use of an interactive mobile device, using at least one hand or hold or supporting with another part of the body or interactive mobile device. So you can't do that anymore. You can't hold it in your hand. Okay? Now it says number 2, dialing or answering interactive mobile device by pressing one or more buttons. Okay? So you can, if the phone's on your dash, in your cup holder, on your seat, you can reach over and touch that button to answer it as long as it's hands-free then. Okay? But, number 3, reaching for an interactive mobile device in a manner that requires a driver to maneuver so the driver is no longer in a seated driving position. So if that falls off your seat and you're reaching down to the floor, you're in violation of the law. So are there any exceptions? Yes. Using an interactive mobile device shall be permissible by a driver of a motor vehicle if necessary to communicate with law enforcement or other emergencies services to prevent injury of persons or property. So if you're on with 911, you are not in violation of the law. So if you get stopped and you are cited for this section and you take a hearing, it's not the police officer's duty now to prove that you were on your phone, because you're not supposed to have your phone on you. Now it's your duty to prove why you're on the phone. You have to prove that you were calling 911. Also, you can use GPS, listen to music, as long as it's hands-free. Nothing's changed there. Statistics. These came from the official website of the Commonwealth of PA. All right, they did a study. 2023 distracted drivers was leading cause of car crashes in Pennsylvania, with traffic deaths rising 2.25 compared to 2022. The report showed 1,209 deaths in motor vehicle crashes, up to over 1,100 the prior year. There were more than 11,000 distracted driving crashes in 2023 compared to 8,300 alcohol. That's quite alarming. Quite alarming. So with this law, hopefully we can just axe that whole number and be 0. I know, if you think about it, insurance companies, if you're a CEO of an insurance company, State Farm, Geico, crashes, I think I'd be thinking of ways to get the message across to put the phone down, to knock out 11,000 crashes. And when does this go into effect? Starting June 5th, 2025, this year. They're given a grace period. Only warnings can be issued. That doesn't mean you can't be stopped. It's a primary offense, meaning you can be stopped alone by using your phone. Okay, a secondary offense, I'll give you an example. A secondary offense is your seatbelt, meaning we can't stop you unless you have another violation. Okay? Starting June 5th, 2026, that's when the fines start. If you get caught with it, you can get cited for it. So there's a grace period, but you can still be pulled over and be given a warning for the use of a cell phone right now. Any questions? Ms. Clayton?
Yes, if you've been warned once, do you get a second chance before that year is up, or is it one and done?
Law states you get warned for 1 year.
Okay, so if you've been stopped and get a warning and don't get the message, then,
You just get a warning. That's what it states right now.
okay, thank you.
Ms. DeSuisi?
First thing is, can this be put on our website?
Yes.
Okay. Second is I checked the police department section of Bellefonte.net. There doesn't appear to be any place in this section of our website where these types of educational materials can be posted within the Bellefonte. I don't know if this is a question for you or for you to add a subsection within the police section for educational materials like this, because I think if it's placed there, it would be more likely to stay there instead of scrolling down and disappearing.
We can look at that, sure.
Okay, and I think this is a little bit broader than that, is that we could create this subsection so that any other educational materials that you believe the public should know about could be placed within that, and on your Facebook
Sure.
site, because I did look at the Facebook page as well, and I did not see this on there.
Yeah, this will probably be on there. This is just something new we did. I was
Yeah.
asked to do that. Mr. Stewart won something. I think it's great. I think it's good for our newsletter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just something new we're trying.
So I'm very pleased that this information is coming out, but I think we need to ramp up the educational outreach to the community a little bit.
Mr. Brackwell?
Excuse me, in addition to the community, I think it's important to get this information into the high school.
Sure. Correct.
Somebody should do that.
Okay, Bill, so I'm coming down the road and I want to call somebody and I can just talk to my phone. I can have my hands on my steering wheel because they're out there now. And how's that work?
You mean if you don't have the phone in your hand?
Yeah. I'm just,
No violation.
okay.
Everything's hands-free.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you.
Chief. Okay, we'll move on with reports. They were all in your packet. Any questions? Mr. Stewart's report was in there, and he is here if you have any questions.
I have some things.
Okay.
I don't know why we keep missing these. We did get a Spring Creek Watershed Commission meeting minutes back in December, I believe, or January, for January. The next one's going to come out in March, but it's not in here, so that's why I just printed that in. The Bellefonte Fire Department does not meet until Thursday, the fourth Thursday, so that won't get in here now till the following month of February, March, I guess. Center Region Council Governments was canceled. Workplace Safety, I was there, but wasn't listed, so I'm letting you know I was there.
Yes, we did not get the minutes back yet, so, or we didn't have them for the materials, so that's why there's no submission.
I just want to let you know what's
Sure.
going on, because people were asking me what's going on.
Great, thank you, Randy. Anybody else have comments on any of the reports or questions? Okay, we will move on to current and old business. The Shade Tree Commission volunteer application, we are waiting on a legal opinion, and I understand we have not received anything yet.
That is correct.
Great, okay, thank you. Next, the light at Missoula Park update. The staff contacted West Penn Power about taking out the light. West Penn Power said to pull the photo cell. Our staff did that, and the light is out. The staff is researching LED options. There is no council action at this time. Does anybody have questions or comments?
Did that light cost the borough $5,000, or how much was that?
No, that was an option of putting in our own light, which I think was about that much, but this light was leased from West Penn Power, so there is a lease fee, but it's not like outrageous or anything. So we just pulled the bulb for now, or this photo cell for now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next on our business, the RACP funding for the waterfront project. The owners have a cooperative agreement with the borough. The owners are submitting new forms to the PA DCED and need council approval and official signing. I'll need a motion and a second for approval of the forms to be submitted to the Pennsylvania DCED and to be signed contingent upon all cooperative agreements being reviewed and updated where needed. It is further motion that council strongly encourages the owners to break ground on this long-anticipated economic development project as soon as possible.
So moved, Brackbill.
Thank you. Randy? Do I have a second on that?
Second, Sedgwick.
Thank you. First, I'll ask if there is any public comment, and then we will move to discussion with council. Joanne?
The second half of this motion is that we strongly encourage the owners to break ground as soon as possible. Do we want to set a time limit on groundbreaking as part of this contingency? My belief is they're saying break ground as soon as possible is blowing in the wind. It means nothing, in my humble opinion.
Any other comments?
Oh, sorry, I thought I turned it on. I turned it off. It's my understanding that this project started before 5 of us were elected to the board, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm not fully informed like I would have been if I'd have been here prior. So my understanding is that this has gone now to the state level for approval?
What they're doing is they're applying for they actually receive state funds, and they kind of have been in limbo. This RACP is state funding. It's like redevelopment, capital assistance, something or other. It's an acronym for the type of funding that this grant represents. So they received it probably 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. And there was an original cooperation agreement with the borough, and I noticed, a couple of things, that the numbers don't match what's on these forms. And I did ask if the forms had been updated. They said yes. So that's one reason why we have the motion that we want to update the cooperation agreement. But they still own the property. What happened was the borough IDA / the borough sold the property to this developer in December of 2019. In March of 2020, COVID hit. So, for a year and a half, 2 years, that was the reason no dirt was being moved. And then the next reason was high inflation. So, we have encouraged the developer to break ground, but to date, nothing has been done. He has several grants from the state. This is just one of them, and he's looking to, at least looks like he's going to start working with the state, sending in these new forms, and so that part looks positive, but there's nothing we can do. We can only encourage. We have no regulatory power over this developer to actually start moving dirt.
So is there a time limit, a contract or anything that they have with the borough to start?
No.
And
No, there is not.
Joanne?
Thank you, Sean.
I have an idea. I'd like to make a motion that if ground isn't broken by June of 2026, that gives them a year and a half, that we will stop mowing the lot, and he will have to start paying to keep that property within our ordinances.
Well, we could do that separately, and we should discuss that separately, because right now, the public uses the property. Otherwise, it would be fenced, maybe with a 6-foot fence, and that wouldn't look very nice, and everybody should know that that's the consequences if we don't work out a partnership. So I think that's a separate discussion, and a worthy discussion, but separate from this motion or this action.
Well, personally, I would like to see us, if there's any way to do it, back out of this agreement, because they're wasting our time, and I don't like the design of the buildings. It sounds like it's more of a private enterprise than really benefiting the borough, and I think we could find a better use for it.
So let me clarify, they have actually purchased the property, just like anybody else can. They now, for any structure, because it's in our historic district, they have to go through first the review process, and then Borough Council decides what the design will look like, what people see. So that process is available to anyone building or constructing in the historic district. So ultimately, whatever Harb looks at, doesn't matter, has to come here, and the council will decide what it should look like.
That's not done yet. I thought it was.
No, it has not been done.
Okay,
No,
we're just
no.
getting drawings.
Yeah, they're just doing drawings, and council will finalize or approve the final look, and if there's any changes, they have to come back.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Any other comments? I would just like to say I agreed to a lot of questions and changes that have been made over the years since we've been on council, so hopefully this will get moving. But the motion in the second is to sign these forms. And it's all contingent upon the cooperative agreement being reviewed and updated where needed. We do have a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Please.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackville?
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton? Yes. Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
No.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
No.
Yeah, it's 7-2, so it passes.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to new business, the 2025 paving bid opening. We will then need a motion and a second to allow staff to review, make deletions to fit the budget, and approve the lowest responsible bid.
So I'm going to open this and hand it to our council president. I did notice on the bid sheet, there's 7 options. So I think what we're going to do is try to look for the total dollar value. And of course, as Barb mentioned, all this has to be turned over and reviewed, which will be done. But just for the simplicity of things, we're going to look for the total number if it's here.
Hopefully.
I think we need a motion and second before you open them, and then we can do that. Because she asked for the motion.
Okay. If you want to do it that way, but we don't even know what they are yet. But yeah, if you want to do that, you're welcome to.
So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, well, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bernier? Yes. Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton? Yes. Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the first bid is from Glen O. Hall Baker. Yes, I'm not sure where that spreadsheet is, but probably towards the back here.
Okay. This is from Glen O. Hawbaker. It is $207,878.50. $207,878.50.
Next bid is HRI Incorporated.
HRI Incorporated is $300,732.55.
This does not have a name on the outside of the envelope. This is Wade, W-Y-D-E.
And for wide, it is $189,160.85. These are all for 6 different streets that will be paved.
Yes, I say there's different options, so we'll have to review everything. The last bid is from Big Rock Paving.
What was that again?
Big Rock
Thank you.
Paving.
For Big Rock Paving, it is $187,512.60. $187,512.60. And then we will pass these on to the staff to review those. We have moving on to the next. Yeah, we did, right? Letter from Chief Whitmer requesting ordinance amendment, Chapter 108 in Police. I need a motion and a second to approve advertising the ordinance amendment for council vote on March 3rd, 2025.
I'll make that motion, Brackbill.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Shauna. Is there any public comment on this? Council comment?
Just a clarification question. How is this motion to advertise this amendment to the ordinance 108 related to the next motion we're going to be considering related to updating the police department policies and procedures manual?
The ordinance is not, so the ordinance goes with the one section of the policy that's not in there yet to be approved. It'll be on the next round. But the the attorney says that we need to adopt this ordinance into our ordinances so that policy go together.
So let me ask this then. So if this ordinance is passed, then this would go into that policy manual, or is this, will these be two?
This ordinance
completely
goes
separate?
with the borough ordinances, so it works with the new policy that will be coming to you for approval.
But it's not included in the, it isn't currently included in this policy motions, but it could be included in the future.
It will be next time,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can we have roll call vote, please, Debbie?
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton? Yes. Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We need an improvement for resolution number 02182025-01, adopting the police department's updated policies. I need a motion and a second to approve the resolution adopting the police department's updated policies, please.
So, okay. So, and I'll second it.
Great, thank you. That was all in your packet. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Could we have a vote, please?
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton? Yes. Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next, we would like to consider approval of issuing a request for proposals for grant writing services. I need a motion and a second to approve the motion as stated, please.
I'll make that motion, Purnell.
Thank you.
I'll
Rita.
second. Bernier.
Thank you, Kent. Is there discussion on this? Joanne?
Okay. I thought we already had grant writing in-house. So why are we doing this? And also, I don't believe that this is in the budget that we passed in December. If we were to do this, which budget will come out of, and what line item would this be related to?
I don't know. What we had discussed at the agenda meeting was getting some requests for proposals, which does not cost us anything, so we would be able to compare possibly for in the future for that.
Yes, I mean, it would just cost the cost of advertising, but you'd have some numbers to look at and consider, and then decide, you know, where the money's coming from.
Any other discussion?
Is there a reason that there a reason that it's not staying in-house?
I don't know that it is planning to move, but there was some discussion about different companies that are out there that do that, and we thought it might be a good idea to at least find out what they have to offer. Any other questions? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
No.
Ms. Cleaton? Yes. Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
No.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
No.
That's 6-3 in favor.
Thank you. We have a cooperative agreement approval, owners of the former Sutton Engineering property, also known as Bellefonte Works on South Potter Street, received an RACP grant several years ago that is passing through the borough. Owners are interested in making improvements to the property. The owners must have the borough's assistance with this grant. The agreement states the obligation of the owners. I'll need a motion and a second to approve the borough in assisting with this grant contingent upon the owners entering into a cooperative agreement with the borough.
So moved, Brackbill.
I'll second it, Bernier.
Thank you. Discussion, please. Joanne?
Unless I missed it, I didn't see any paperwork associated with this proposed motion.
They have not submitted any paperwork yet. They got the grant back when Senator Corman was still in office, and they had talked about doing something. They haven't done anything to date, but it looks like they're starting to move on this particular project, and that's one reason I, on behalf of the borough, asked for a cooperation agreement similar to, or identical to what we would have with Mr. Songer and the Waterfront District.
Should we then, so then my question is, should we table this until we get some type of paperwork and have you move ahead and get this cooperation agreement done? I think trying to do this in advance does not, to me, seem appropriate.
You can make it contingent upon getting an agreement. They already have the grant. It's a very strange process. They get a letter saying they're going to get the grant, and then they put the application together, which I think is what they're working on, and then they do the whole project according to the regulations, and at the end, they get 50% back. So they've got a long ways to go, but the first part is get an agreement. It tells them what they have to abide by. They have to do the auditing or take care of that. They have to maintain all the paperwork and everything. So our first initial start is to get an agreement. So they know where they stand. If they want to go forward, they can. If they don't have to. But our first part of us being involved is to get an agreement with them.
My question, though, is, should we see that agreement before we vote on it, or are we saying that this vote is this evening?
Joanne, it says right here, it's contingent upon us agreeing to it. So they're requesting to make improvements to the property.
Okay, I agree with that. I think that's great.
Us agreeing, contingently agreeing with their proposal. So we're going to see this again, and you'll have a chance to say yes or no. Why would we want to slow this down?
Okay.
Just to clarify.
That's basically where I'm going.
The agreement's the same agreement, except the numbers are different, that we're going to have with Tom Songer. It's the same agreement. That's it.
What I was trying to say was, and you just said it in a different way, was that we'll
No,
have it.
I just
and will
read
it be
what it
coming?
says here.
Let me ask this: will it be coming back to council for final approval, or do we just say go ahead and if they sign off and we agree and you agree with it, it's fine? That's what I'm asking.
I was going to take the motion if it passes, have the agreement looked at by our solicitor and then send it over to have these folks sign it and send it back. Now if council wants to do something different, we can do it, but that was what I was going to do.
So the process, just to make, so I'm clear, is we would pass this evening, you would work with
Our solicitor,
and Bellefonte Works to craft this thing.
no, with our solicitor, craft it and send it over for them
Okay.
to sign it.
Okay.
Yes. The original agreement was done by Mr. Beard, the solicitor for the IDA. I want to, again, have the agreements looked at and updated and looked at by the borough solicitor.
And that's what we're voting on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton, yes. Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey? Yes. It's unanimous.
Great, thank you. We already did public comment. Next will be council members' comments for the good of the order. Mr. Bernier, can we start with you tonight, please?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have anything.
Just again, thank you to the streets crews for keeping those clear with the snow and ice and just winters holding on.
I have nothing this evening, thanks.
Must be the blahs of February. I do not have anything either.
I'm just happy to be here.
It's the seat.
Thank you, Chief, for the information on the new cell phone laws that will be going into effect. It's appreciated.
I have nothing.
It's really cold outside, and the weather report says it's going to stay that way for a while. Wrap up, stay warm.
Baby, it's cold outside. Miss Sedgwick stole mine, but I do want to echo that because I had a recent experience with the streets crew, and they responded very rapidly to a request that I had, so I truly appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion and a second for adjournment? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Meeting's over.